The shuttle descended through Lumina's atmospheric dome, and Marcus Webb pressed his face against the viewport like a child seeing snow for the first time. The moon colonies spread below him in concentric rings of bioluminescent architecture, each building pulsing with soft light that made the entire city seem alive. After 6 years studying interspecies cultural exchanges, he'd thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He'd been wonderfully wrong. First time to Lumina? The pilot asked, her silver skin catching the reflection of the city lights. First time off Earth, actually, Marcus admitted, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I've spent most of my career in libraries and archives. This is ... incredible. The pilot smiled. Wait until you see the palace. The Queen doesn't invite outsiders often. You must have impressed someone important. Marcus glanced down at the formal invitation, still clutched in his hand, its crystalline surface shimmering with text that shifted between languages. The message had been simple. Marcus Webb, cultural anthropologist, you are cordially invited to observe the Harvest Moon ceremony as honored guest of Queen Thesara. Your unique perspective on ritual and tradition has been deemed invaluable to our people. He'd assumed it was an academic opportunity, a chance to document the Selenar people's most sacred festival. His dissertation on comparative celebration customs across 3 star systems had apparently caught someone's attention. Marcus had immediately accepted, much to the concern of his colleagues who'd warned him the Selenar were notoriously private about their traditions. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. As Marcus stepped out, adjusting his ill-fitting formal jacket, he was greeted by a woman whose presence made the air itself seem to pause. Queen Thesara stood at the top of the platform steps, and Marcus understood immediately why his colleagues had spoken of the Selenar in hushed, reverent tones. She was tall, nearly 6.5 feet, with skin that held the faint luminescence of moonstone. Her hair, dark as space between stars, was woven with what appeared to be actual threads of light. She wore a gown that shifted between deep blue and violet, and her eyes, those remarkable silver eyes, regarded him with an intensity that made his carefully prepared greeting die in his throat. Marcus Webb, she said. Her voice like music played on crystal chimes. Welcome to Lumina. I am Thesara. Your Majesty, Marcus managed, attempting the bow his hastily studied protocol guides had suggested. He nearly dropped his research tablet in the process. I'm honored by your invitation. Truly. I've been looking forward to documenting the Harvest Moon ceremony for my research on... Walk with me, Thesara interrupted gently, descending the steps with inhuman grace. There is much to discuss before the ceremony begins. As they walked through gardens where flowers bloomed with their own internal light, Marcus tried to gather his professional composure. He'd interviewed planetary governors, negotiated with merchant guild leaders, even shared tea with a Venusian hive mind collective. But something about Thesara's presence scattered his usual academic detachment. Your work on ritual traditions is quite remarkable, Thesara said, pausing beside a fountain that flowed upward instead of down. Particularly your observations on how ceremonies serve not just cultural but deeply personal needs. Thank you, Your Majesty. I believe traditions reveal truths about what we value most as beings, regardless of our species. Truths, Thesara repeated softly. Yes, that is precisely why I invited you here, Marcus Webb, not as an observer, but as a participant. Marcus stumbled slightly. I'm sorry, I don't understand. The invitation specified observation only. I wouldn't want to intrude on sacred practices. Thesara turned to face him fully, and in the garden's soft light, Marcus saw something unexpected in her expression: uncertainty, perhaps even vulnerability. The Harvest Moon ceremony is indeed sacred to my people, but it is also ... complex, and I find myself in need of someone who understands both the power of tradition and the courage to question it. Before Marcus could respond, 3 figures emerged from the palace archway ahead. They were clearly Thesara's daughters. They shared her luminescent beauty and silver eyes, but each possessed distinct qualities that set them apart. The eldest moved with careful precision, her hair bound in intricate braids, her gown formal and perfectly arranged. The middle daughter had paint staining her fingers, and her hair was shorter, cut in a practical style that framed a face full of lively curiosity. The youngest wore clothing that blended Selenar tradition with what looked suspiciously like Earth fashion trends, her posture radiating barely contained energy. "Mother," the eldest said, her tone measured and cool. "You've brought him." "Vera, please," Thesara said with a hint of exasperation. "This is Marcus Webb, our honored guest. Marcus, these are my daughters. Vera, my eldest. Nim, who sees the world through an artist's eyes. And Solen, who questions everything, including why we're still doing this ceremony at all," Solen muttered. Earning a sharp look from Vera, Marcus felt distinctly like he'd walked into the middle of a family argument. "It's wonderful to meet you all. I'm looking forward to learning about your traditions." "Our traditions," Nim said, studying him with open fascination, "include the harvest blessing, where the queen selects a worthy individual to ensure prosperity for our people. A symbolic role, I assume?" Marcus asked hopefully. The 3 daughters exchanged glances. Vera's expression remained neutral, but Nim's lips quirked with amusement, and Solen outright grinned. "Not exactly," Thesara said quietly. "The harvest blessing is an ancient practice where the chosen one is offered to the queen's unwed daughters. The one who forms the strongest bond is believed to bring good fortune to our colony." Marcus's research tablet slipped from his fingers, clattering on the crystalline pathway. "I'm sorry, offered?" "As in ... as in you're supposed to choose one of us," Solen finished bluntly. "Or rather, we're supposed to compete for your favor during the ceremony. It's all very primitive and outdated, if you ask me." "Which no one did," Vera said coldly. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," Thesara suggested, her composure perfect, but her eyes betraying concern at Marcus's obvious shock. "There is much context you need to understand." As they walked toward the palace, Marcus's mind raced. He'd come expecting to take notes on ceremonial dances and harvest songs. Instead, he'd apparently been cast as the central figure in some kind of ritualized courtship ceremony. This was either going to be the most fascinating research opportunity of his career or the most spectacular diplomatic disaster in human history, possibly both. The palace doors closed behind them with a soft sound like a sigh, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just crossed a threshold into something far more complicated than any academic study could prepare him for. The palace's interior defied every expectation Marcus had formed from studying Selenar architecture through screens and texts. The walls seemed to breathe with soft luminescence, and corridors curved in ways that suggested the building itself was organic, grown rather than constructed. Thesara led him through a series of chambers until they reached what appeared to be a private sitting room. Its ceiling opened to Lumina's artificial sky, where 3 moons hung in perfect alignment. "Please, sit," Thesara gestured to a chair that molded itself to accommodate his human frame. Her daughters arranged themselves around the room with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Vera sat with perfect posture on a bench near the window. Nim perched on the arm of a sofa, with her legs tucked under her, and Solen leaned against a bookshelf with crossed arms. Marcus settled into the chair, his mind still processing what he'd been told. "Your Majesty, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding. I'm a cultural anthropologist. I'm not qualified to be part of a sacred ceremony. Surely there are protocols, requirements." "You are exactly what we need," Thesara said, sitting across from him. "That is the problem. Mother has been receiving pressure from the Council of Elders for 3 lunar cycles now, Vera explained, her tone clipped and professional. As unwed daughters of the Queen, we are expected to secure bonds that will strengthen Lumina's alliances. The harvest moon ceremony has traditionally been the method for dot selection. But it's been over a century since we actually performed the full ceremony, Nim added, her voice softer, more thoughtful. Most royal bonds are now arranged through diplomatic channels. The ceremony had become purely symbolic. Until the elders decided tradition should be revived, Solen finished with obvious distaste. Because apparently, nothing says progressive society like treating your daughters like prizes at a harvest festival. Solen, Isara's voice carried a warning. But Marcus noticed the flash of pain in the Queen's eyes. Marcus removed his glasses, cleaning them a nervous habit from his graduate school days. So you need someone to participate in the ceremony to satisfy the elders, but you don't actually want to go through with the traditional outcome? It's more complicated than that, Isara said softly. The ceremony exists because, historically, it served a purpose. Our people once faced extinction. Every bond, every child mattered desperately. The harvest blessing was our way of ensuring genetic diversity and strengthening community ties. But we're not facing extinction anymore, Solen interjected. We have treaties with dozens of worlds. Our population is stable. This whole thing is just tradition, Vera said firmly, which gives our people identity and continuity. You cannot simply discard centuries of practice because it's inconvenient, even when that tradition treats people as commodities. Solen shot back. Marcus watched the 3 daughters, seeing beyond the surface argument. Vera's rigid adherence to protocol masked deep uncertainty. Nim's quiet observation spoke of someone caught between opposing viewpoints. And Solen's rebellion had the flavor of someone who cared too much about something to watch it become hollow. "What do you want, Marcus Webb?" Nim asked suddenly, her silver eyes studying him with unnerving focus. "Not what your research requires or what protocol demands. What do you, as a person, want from this situation?" The question caught him off guard. "I want to understand," he said slowly. "That's always been my answer. I want to understand why traditions matter to people, what they reveal about who we are. And right now, I want to understand why a queen who clearly loves her daughters would put them through something that causes such obvious pain." Silence fell over the room. Nisara's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something that looked almost like relief. "Because I made a mistake," Nisara said quietly. "Years ago, when I first took the throne, I was young and certain I could change everything. I abolished many old practices, modernized our government, opened Lumina to other worlds. But in doing so, I alienated traditionalists who saw me as erasing our identity. When they demanded the ceremony be revived, I agreed, thinking I could control the situation, make it meaningful rather than mercenary. Instead, you ended up in an impossible position," Marcus said. "Damned if you follow through, damned if you refuse." "Quite," Isara smiled sadly. "And then I read your work. Your paper on the Martian renewal ceremonies particularly resonated with me. You wrote about how sometimes traditions must evolve to survive, that honoring the spirit of a practice matters more than rigid adherence to its form. So you brought me here hoping I'd—" "What? Provide cover for changing the ceremony?" "I brought you here hoping you would see us," Isara said, her voice carrying unexpected intensity. "Not as exotic subjects for study, not as political problems to solve, but as people caught between honoring our past and building our future." Before Marcus could respond, soft chimes echoed through the palace, a sound like distant bells carried on moonlight. "The first trial begins," Vera announced, rising smoothly. "Marcus Webb, according to tradition, you must now be tested to determine your worthiness as the harvest blessing." Each of us will present a challenge. Your performance will be judged by the elders. Tested? Nobody mentioned tests, Marcus said, panic creeping into his voice. Don't worry, Nim said with a mischievous smile. We're not allowed to make them life-threatening, merely illuminating. That's not as reassuring as you think. Marcus muttered. The first trial took place in what Vera called the Hall of Reflection, a circular chamber lined with mirrors that seemed to show not just reflections, but possibilities, versions of oneself making different choices, living different lives. Marcus stood in the center while Vera circled him slowly, her movements precise as a dancer's. The first trial tests wisdom, she announced, her voice carrying to wherever the watching elders were hidden. Marcus Webb, you have studied many cultures, many traditions. Tell me, when a practice causes harm, but carries historical significance, what is the correct path? Preservation or destruction? Marcus saw the trap immediately. Any absolute answer would be wrong. Neither, he said carefully. Or both. Or something entirely different. The question assumes only two options exist. Elaborate. A tradition that causes harm needs examination, but blanket destruction is its own kind of violence. You end up destroying the meaning people have invested in that practice, the identity they've built around it. He paused, thinking of Visara's earlier words. Real wisdom isn't choosing between preservation and destruction. It's finding transformation, keeping what makes a tradition meaningful while releasing what makes it harmful. Vera stopped circling, studying him with new interest. And who decides what is harmful? What is meaningful? The people living with it, Marcus said simply. Not scholars in towers or elders in councils. The people whose lives are actually shaped by the tradition. For a moment, Vera's perfect composure cracked, showing surprise and something that might have been approval. Then she nodded curtly. The first trial is complete. Nim's trial took place in a garden studio, where she'd been working on a massive canvas that seemed to capture moonlight itself in paint. She handed Marcus a brush without preamble. The second trial tests connection, she said. Paint with me. Not what you think I want to see, but what you feel in this moment. Marcus stared at the brush, then at the canvas. I'm not an artist. I can barely draw stick figures. This isn't about skill, Nim said softly, already adding sweeping strokes of midnight blue to the canvas. It's about honesty. Show me who you are when you're not hiding behind research and observation. Marcus took a breath and touched brush to canvas. His strokes were clumsy, uncertain, but he tried to capture what he felt, the disorientation of being so far from Earth, the unexpected pull of Visara's presence, the complex tangle of duty and desire he sensed in this family. Colors mixed and bled, deep greens of earth forests, a silver blue of luminous light. Warm golds that somehow represented the warmth he felt, despite his confusion, when he stepped back. His contribution looked amateurish next to Nim's elegant work. But she was smiling, really smiling. You paint loneliness seeking connection, she said quietly, and hope that understanding might bridge the distance. The second trial is complete. Solenne's trial was the simplest and somehow the most challenging. She led Marcus to the palace roof, where luminous 3 moons hung so close they seemed touchable, and simply said, "Tell me something true. Something you've never told anyone because it would cost you something to admit it." Marcus looked at this young woman who radiated defiance and recognized a kindred spirit, someone who questioned, because they cared deeply, not because they didn't care at all. "I'm terrified," he admitted, "not of this ceremony or your elders, or even the political implications of being here. I'm terrified that I've spent my whole career studying how people connect across differences, and I still don't know how to do it myself. I hide behind observation because actually participating means risking being wrong, being rejected, being hurt. Solène regarded him for a long moment, the moons casting her face in silver light. Then she laughed not mockingly, but with genuine warmth. "Finally, someone honest," she said. "The third trial is complete. And for what it's worth, Marcus Webb, I think you're exactly the kind of wrong we need around here." That evening, Marcus found himself alone in the guest quarters they'd assigned him, a suite that overlooked the city with walls that could become transparent at a thought. He was reviewing his notes when soft chimes announced a visitor. The Sarah entered without waiting for permission, and Marcus noticed she'd changed from her formal gown into something simpler, though no less elegant. She carried a bottle of something luminescent and 2 glasses. "I thought you might need this," she said, pouring drinks that sparkled like captured starlight. "It's called moon wine, made from fruits that only grow in our gardens." Marcus accepted the glass gratefully. "Your daughters are remarkable, Your Majesty. Each so different, but each brilliant in their own way. They get that from their father," the Sarah said, settling into a chair across from him. "He was human, actually. Did you know that?" Marcus nearly dropped his glass. "I know. That wasn't in any of the research materials. We kept it quiet. 20 years ago, human-Selenar unions were even more controversial than they are now. He was a poet, of all things. Came here to write about the moon colonies and never left." Her smile turned bittersweet. "He gave me 15 wonderful years before a shuttle accident took him. And he gave me 3 daughters who carry both our worlds in their blood. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I had more love in those 15 years than many people find in lifetimes." The Sarah sipped her wine. "That's why this ceremony has become so painful. I know what real connection feels like, Marcus, and I cannot bear to watch my daughters settle for political arrangements that lack it." "Then why not simply cancel the ceremony? You're the queen." "Because sometimes being queen means making choices that tear you apart inside." She met his eyes. "The elders hold considerable power. If I defy them too openly, they could fracture our government, turn conservative factions against the progressive policies we've fought for. But if I force my daughters through this traditional ceremony, I betray everything their father and I believed about love." Marcus set down his glass, understanding crystallizing. "So you brought me here as a catalyst. Someone outside your political system who could—" "What? Disrupt things enough to create a third option?" "I brought you here because your work suggests you understand that traditions are living things, not museum pieces. They can grow, change, become something new while still honoring what came before." The Sarah stood, moving to the transparent wall overlooking the city. "And perhaps, selfishly, I brought you here because I've been very lonely, Marcus Webb, and your words about transformation and connection made me feel less alone." Marcus joined her at the window, close enough to feel the subtle warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. "Your Majesty, the Sarah," she corrected softly. "When we're alone, please." "Just the Sarah." "The Sarah," he repeated, the name feeling intimate on his tongue. "I think you've already found your third option. Your daughters aren't asking you to choose between tradition and love. They're asking you to show them how to redefine tradition so it serves love instead of opposing it." She turned to face him, and in her silver eyes, Marcus saw the same fear he'd confessed to Solène, the terror of vulnerability, of admitting what you truly want. "And what if I've forgotten how?" the Sarah whispered. "What if I've been queen for so long that I don't remember how to simply be a person who wants something for herself?" The space between them felt charged, like the air before a storm. Marcus knew he should step back, maintain professional distance, remember all the reasons why this was complicated and dangerous and absolutely inadvisable. Instead, he reached out and gently took her hand, her skin cool and smooth, yet somehow familiar. "Then maybe," he said quietly, "we figure it out together. For a moment, neither moved. Then, the Sara's fingers tightened around his. And Marcus understood that whatever he'd expected from this journey, whatever academic observations he'd planned to make, he'd just crossed a line into something far more personal. The harvest ceremony was 3 days away. And suddenly, Marcus wasn't sure whether he was supposed to be studying the tradition or becoming part of it.